Hey guys, it's Ben from Board to Bits, and this is part 6 of our point-and-click adventure series in Unity. So this is actually going to be a pretty quick video, but it's going to be very important for the next couple steps we want to do. I talked last time about creating a system where our player can control their camera, what position, what rotation it is, based on how they move their mouse. But in order to do that, we're going to need to set up a little bit of a camera rig for our camera. If we try to do it just with the single game object we have right now, we're going to get some very weird angles due to how the rotation works. And so in order to make this work a little bit better for us, we are going to need to create sort of a gimbal system where we have an outer object that controls looking left to right, and then the camera itself will control looking up and down. So let's get that set up. First thing we're going to need to do is create an empty game object in our scene, and I'm just going to call this camera rig. I'm going to pull it up here where our camera lives, and I'm going to make the camera a child of that. Now that we have that set up, we're going to add a script to our camera rig, and we're going to call that camera rig. So let's go into our scripts folder, create a C# script, name it camera rig, and just drag that as soon as it loads for you. And make sure you're dragging that onto the rig and not the main camera itself. We can open that up in MonoDevelop. I'll zoom in here. And what we need for this, we're going to need 3 variables. The first 2 are going to be transforms. We're going to have a public transform called y-axis and a public transform called x-axis. And these are going to be what are responsible for rotating the camera on their respective axes. We're never gonna do like a z-axis tilt, because we're never going to do like a head tilt where we're kind of turning at this point. So we don't have to worry about that. It's just really the x and y. Last thing I'm going to add is a public float called move time. And this is kind of relates back to last episode where when I was talking about making these match a single variable rather than having 2 separate numbers to have to adjust. We're just going to implement that as well in here. So with these, we should probably assign these 2 transforms right now before we forget. So here in camera rig, those should pop up. There we are. And so y-axis will be the camera rig itself, and the x-axis will be the main camera. Move time, I'll keep at 0.75 and make sure we have that set in there. And now, the other thing that I want this rig to do, right now we've been currently controlling the camera through the node, which works fine, but it'd be nice if there was just actually one script controlling the camera at all times, and then other things are just kind of telling that script what to do, kind of that whole consolidating responsibility. And it really makes sense that if you have a camera script on your camera, it should probably be controlling how the camera moves. So what we're going to do actually is we're going to copy and paste all of this and paste it into a function we're going to create here. We're going to make this a public function, and this function is going to be called align to, and we're going to pass in a transform, and we'll call that target. So basically this this function is public void align to, because it's not going to return anything. We can also delete the start and update functions. We don't need those. And so this is now going to be what's responsible for moving the camera and rotating the camera. So we're going to paste in our language or our script from the node script. And all of a sudden now we're getting a lot of red because we don't have the proper namespace in here for these. So we're going to add back in using dg.tweening, which is from our DoTween asset store download we did. And now we also these aren't quite what we want all of these variables to be now, because we obviously don't have a camera position, we have a target, and we no longer want to just be working with the main camera's transform, we want to be working with this y-axis and x-axis. So first off, for the actual movement, that's going to be on that y-axis, that outer game object, the shell, because once we move that, its child, the camera, will come with it. So we can actually just change this pretty easily, and we're just going to, instead of saying all of this, we can just say y-axis. And then do that do move to the target position, because that's now our transform that is our destination. We're going to pass in the camera position there that we had originally. Now we can no longer just rotate just the transform of the camera. We need to rotate the y and the x separately. So we need to do a little bit more work with these two. First one is going to still be the y-axis, and it's still going to be do rotate. But for this one, we're now, instead of doing all of this here, we're going to need to create a new vector 3. New vector 3. And that's going to be based on, we're just moving that y. So our x and our z can be 0. There's going to be no movement or rotation in those two positions. So we're going to say 0f, and then camera position rotation, Euler angles dot y for our y, and then finally 0f for z. So this creates our vector 3. However, we don't have a camera position anymore again, so we need to say target dot rotation dot Euler angles dot y. So x is 0, y is the y of our camera position, and z is 0 again. And then we're going to actually just copy this line, paste it in here, and this is how we're going to rotate our x-axis. However, there's one more step for this, not really a step, but a slightly different function here. Instead of rotate, we're going to do local rotate, and that's because we want the rotation of the x-axis to respond to how the y has been rotated. It's not independent of it. And so for this one, lastly, it's a pretty simple change here. We just want to obviously make sure we're moving the x now instead of the y. So we're just going to delete that there, make sure the y is changed to x, and then add back in a third element here. So now we have our x, and then 0, 0. And that's really it for how this is going to be set up now. The only other thing we have to remember to do is be sure to change this from moving the camera to actually calling on this align2 script. Now, unfortunately, we don't have a way to access the camera rig right now because our camera rig doesn't have a static instance of it. So we would have to somehow either wire it to the node, or what we can do is we can open up our game manager, which does have a static instance, and we can add a new variable here called public camera rig. We'll just call that camrig rig. And now we can have node say game manager .ints.rig, so we're calling on the camera rig that we'll have to assign, dot align to, and then it's going to align to the camera position. We can get rid of these old lines here too. Save that, and that's saved. So if we go into our scene, we should get the rig popped up there. So we'll drag the rig in there, save our scene, hit play. And now what we should see here is the exact same thing we were seeing before, that smooth animation from place to place. And it is working a little bit differently than we want. And that's why we test these things. Oh, and I I may know why that is. Oh, I know why that is. Because our camera rig was not at 0, 0, 0 when we first placed it in the scene, which now means that the camera is not aligned to it, so they're actually kind of moving at a different, where they're in different spaces. So what we want to do here is we want to make sure, what's most important is that we make our main camera set to 0, 0, 0 for its position. We can also then move the camera rig back to that as well. We can just do reset for that. And we'll move that back up to 1.75. So now when we hit play, and we click here, there we go. Now the camera's in the right position. So, like I say, it's working the exact same way. The difference now is that the main camera never turns side to side, and the camera rig is never turning up and down. They're handling those two things independently. And that's going to be really important in our next video when we actually show how moving the mouse around is going to control how the camera moves. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.